And now it's my great pleasure to introduce a woman who's become one of my newest friends, a really lovely person, Suzanne Hanser, who's the head of the Berklee College of Music in Boston and really developed the music therapy programs there. And Suzanne really organized today and is going to do a really special session I know you're going to enjoy, entitled Music in Everyday Life. And her perspective on interventions for wellness, stress management, and just general quality of life. So Suzanne, thanks to you for being here in Santa Fe too.
Great pleasure to be here. And I must thank Dr. Cheryl Willman, Mark Nykrug, and all of the people who have put on quite a show in the last 2 days and brought us all together. Please thank them. And today I have, I think, some gifts for you. We have been, in the last 2 days, we have been learning many languages, yes? Music cognition, music neuroscience, music development, music therapy, musicology, and these vocabularies have made us multilingual. So today I'm going to study some translational research and see how we can translate some of these principles and techniques and experiences to your own lives. And to do that, I've invited a few friends. So as they put this together, let me introduce Lynn DeVelder, harpist par excellence, here for the Santa Fe Chamber Music Festival. Please welcome Lynn DeVelder. Lynn and I are new friends, and Lynn is going to assist me in some musical experiences for you. So I'm going to ask you to please resist that well-learned behavior to applaud after the music, because this is going to be a musical experience, not a performance. And I'm going to ask you to notice certain things about this experience, and even for those of you who are willing, perhaps to share some of that experience. So as Lynn begins a piece, and I must tell you the name because you might be searching your mind throughout this listening experience to say, have I heard that before? What is this? And you may not have heard it. It's called Small River Flowing. And as she begins, I invite you to close your eyes, to go inward, and to let the music surround you and fill you. Perhaps you'll hear the music float. Perhaps you'll feel that floating sensation. Perhaps you'll find a way that the music is working inside and out and changing the way you feel, changing what you're thinking. Let's see. So if you're willing, I invite you to close your eyes and to listen to some beautiful music. And as the music comes to an end, notice how you feel. And keep in any good thoughts and feelings you have as you breathe in. And exhale anything you don't need that may have come up for you. And take a nice, clean, cleansing, deep breath. And exhale anything you don't need. And when you're ready, open your eyes. You might want to move your fingers and hands a bit, get this circulation going again. Shake out your legs a bit. And come back to join us. Where have you been? Did anyone notice a change in how you felt? Yes? Anyone notice a change in what was going on in your mind? Yeah. Anyone willing to share what you experienced with that music? Please.
Music. Sorry, I have a question about the music itself. I noticed, because I was sensitive to the rhythm, that it started out in rhythms of 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there would be repetition of 4, and then it moved to 8, then it moved to 12, and then to 10. And I'm wondering if there was any, and then back to 4. I was wondering if there was any purposeful creation of that rhythmic sequence.
And I'm wondering if you are a musician.
Yeah. Yes.
And you see, thank you for illustrating how a musician listens to the music. Letting the notes wash over you was not the way you listen to music, right? And in fact, this was so unintentional. I asked Lynn to find a piece to open our experience together, and this is what she chose. I doubt whether you had the elements of the music in mind. Can you speak to it?
I think at that time, I don't know if we were planning to do it first. You asked for a deeply relaxing
Yes.
piece. And I think I was looking for something a little more folk-oriented because that's what I mostly use when I play at the hospital, just simple harmonies and nothing too dissonant or complex. So, and the whole piece is in 2/4, actually. I mean, the rhythm changes a lot, and it maybe I was stretching things a little. So, yeah.
So when we have an audience of scientists and musicians, we're using that analytical part of the brain. And I'm wondering if any of you were able to listen to this in a different way. Were you? Please.
I found myself just softening from all the discussion. I just started to feel very soft inside and stopped thinking.
So this young woman said she felt a softening inside and felt that softening as the music went on.
I was vulnerable to the power of suggestion. You spoke about flowing and everything, and I saw myself in my favorite spot up on the mountain where the river surrounds this rock where I sit, and all my troubles go away down the river.
So she was taken to this beautiful place in your mind's eye, a rock where you can sit and perhaps contemplate and let those thoughts wander away. So you can imagine that if you are in a state of pain or extreme anxiety, to be brought to, as Tim Ringgold told us, that relaxation vacation, to bring yourself to a beautiful place in your mind's eye when you can't physically visit there, when you can't go to all of those exotic places because you're not an ethnomusicology researcher, you can go there in your mind's eye, and the music can bring you there, can bring you far away. And when you're in a hospital or you are having chemotherapy, perhaps that's just where you need to be. So today we're going to talk about managing your stress and pain. Let me say that again, managing your stress and pain. I wonder how many of you think of using music. How many of you go to concerts regularly? How many of you perform in concerts regularly? How many of you sing? How many of you sing professionally? How many of you sing in a chorus? And how many of you have brought music along to your latest doctor's or dental appointment? Oh, fewer of you. That's what today is about. How do you use this music in your life, not only as entertainment, not only for personal joy, but when you really, really need it? And today I'm going to share with you some of the research that I've done as a music therapist that's led me to develop some evidence-based techniques that, yes, even you can use in your lives. So, when you're in traffic, how many of you listen to the radio? All right, how many of you sing? Okay, well, you're getting the idea. When we can sing about that traffic, it's a far more visceral impact. We have indeed a way to cope with some of that. I'm wondering how many of you might have a personal jingle. A personal jingle. You've got it. Great. What I'm talking about is when you're trying to diet and you're approaching the refrigerator, and that jingle is something to remind you, I can resist, I can resist. And furthermore, now you know that you can entrain to that beat and march away from the fridge as you sing that. And then when you feel that impulse to get that food, I can resist. You know, there's some laughter here. Again, Tim Ringgold reminded us that we play music, and that, yes, we can lighten up that very intense reaction to want that food. And so there's just a few examples of ways in which we can use music in our lives, maybe even as a form of therapy. And fortunately, the healthcare system that we are experiencing now is moving from a model of talking about disease, dysphoria, disability, all of that negative thinking and problem-oriented processing, to a model of thinking of wellness. Wellness was added to the title of this conference as an important element in moving medicine toward empowerment. And musicians, music therapists, people who love music know this very well, know the peak experience that Maslow described, that we experience whenever we hear beautiful music that's so meaningful to us, music we love. And Csikszentmihalyi talks about the flow, when you're in the zone, when you can't think about anything else, but the music is truly enveloping you. This connection between mind and body, it's very real, it's very scientifically based now, and it's moving us toward a model of integrative medicine, where once we looked at music therapy and ancient techniques we knew little about, acupuncture, massage, we looked at those as alternative. And now they're complementary. They're used side by side, traditional medicine, and even being integrated into medical treatment. We learned this week about the autonomic nervous system. Dr. Chamali talked about how music, particularly Mark Nykrug's piece, Healing Symphony, brought out that parasympathetic nervous system. My friend and neighbor Herb Benson, father of the relaxation response, knows very well how music can bring us right to a state of deep relaxation. But more recently, he described the breakout principle. The breakout principle says that when we experience great joy, when we're in that flow, when we have beautiful music surrounding us, in fact, the research he did showed that there is a release of nitric oxide. It's not nitrous oxide, but nitric oxide that fights the stress hormones, cortisol, and other neurotransmitters that are released when we're in a deep state of stress. And so that stress is relieved at a very internal level and preserved when we develop a new state, a new mind-body state with repeated listening to beautiful music and repeated breakouts of this peak experience. I like to think that music is something that not only triggers that parasympathetic system, the deep relaxation, but also the deep and strong energy that we feel when we engage in music, and that opportunity for our lungs to be deeply exercised as we're singing, and our whole body to gather strength while we're making music together. We're connecting in more ways than one. And so there's a true homeostasis there for me. That great energy, that deep relaxation, and when it comes together in that zone, we are different sort of people. We are experiencing the peak of our existence. So let me share with you some music therapy trials. And indeed, as Dr. Huron said, my research is based on personal experience and my own observations clinically. And I've been engaged really over the last 30 plus years in a line of research in different populations, but mostly people dealing with various kinds of stressors and in medical settings. So my first studies were with women in labor and childbirth. And they were inspired when I myself went into labor with my second child. You know, when I had my first child, it was all rather magical to me. I really didn't expect there would be this real live baby that would come home with me from the hospital, and I knew very little about what to expect. But with the second child, I was well prepared. I had my bag all packed, and I thought, and mind you, this was over 30 years ago, I'm a music therapist. I should bring music to the labor room. Didn't know anyone who did that at the time, but what a thought. Of course, I'll do that. So I just threw a bunch of, it was these little cassettes at the time, that I threw into my bag, and got permission to use a sterile cassette player in the labor and delivery room, and went in charged up to see what it might be like. And unfortunately, when I got to the hospital, they couldn't find the fetal heartbeat. And eventually, after several tries, and my personal obstetrician, of course, was out of town, and so the physician came in and he said, well, I'm sorry, there will not be a live birth, but we're going to proceed with labor. And there I was. And I, of course, didn't really believe what was going on and didn't have much of a coping strategy because this was such a shock, as you can imagine. And so I had my music. I turned on some music, turned on some Bach. Didn't do anything for me. I love Bach. Turned on some jazz. Love jazz. Didn't do a thing for me. Turned on I don't know, lots of music. Just kept trying. Maybe there's something there. Prokofiev's Second Piano Concerto. Do you know it? Crazy, chaos, cacophony, loud, all over the keyboard. I listened to that over and over and over again, much to the chagrin of those surrounding me, for 14 hours or so of labor. And that was the music, that driving music that matched where I was. And I breathed with that music, and I focused on that music. And I didn't allow myself to think of what was going on inside my body. And when I finally did give birth, I thought, I could not have gone through this 14-hour ordeal without that music. It took me completely away and into the music where I needed to be. And so I thought, during this very traumatic labor, if music helped me, perhaps it could help other women. And I started to work with friends and develop some music programs, music of different tempi, starting with very slow, relaxing music. Small River Flowing might have been perfect for that early stage of labor when I need to relax, get accustomed to what's going on in my body, what's going on around me. And then, as labor becomes more challenging and the contractions are longer and they last longer, more frequent. And at that time, we need music that's going to be very rhythmic, that we can breathe with, that we can focus on, that can take us clearly into a very specific way of interacting with that music. And indeed, the research was quite profound. I learned that if I wanted to have the power to actually see a difference in a randomized control trial, I would need to have, I think it was well over 600 women. And I decided that this was not going to be my life's career to follow 600 women in labor and develop music programs for them. So I used another experimental design with each woman as her own control, a repeated measures design. And I had 10 contractions with music that they had specially selected, that they had used during their practice time, that they had breathed with, that they had imagined with, that they had practiced with, so that when they went into labor, there would be an automatic conditioned response to that music to relax. And I had observations of what I called pain-related behaviors, because while I wanted to observe relaxation, well, I don't know, are you relaxed? I can't really tell. Are you relaxed? Very difficult to observe relaxation, isn't it? But can you observe pain-related behaviors in labor? Clenched fists, flexed feet, hunched shoulders, vocalizations of pain. I don't have to tell you what those were. Your imagination will do it far better. Yes? Requests for medication while the music was on versus while the music was not playing. So I used these pain-related behaviors, and I looked at the number, or the mean number, per set of contractions, with and without music, and compared them. And do you know that in every example, every woman that I worked with in this study, there were fewer pain-related responses when the music was going on. And while many breathing techniques talk about having a visual focal point, a way to focus visually on some stimulus, these women said music is an auditory focal point. I can focus my attention, and I'm thinking about Josephine Briggs. Dr. Briggs mentioned in her opening remarks how attention regulation can be a therapeutic approach, and this is an example of that. And we had some very, very happy women, and hopefully some very happy babies come out of that study. So now I will ask Lynn to join me once again, because I'd like to bring to you a technique where, as Lynn plays the gymnopédic, which most of you probably know, here we have some familiar music, and I wonder how the familiar music might serve you as opposed to what may have been novel to you in that first piece. And as she begins to play, I invite you to just let the music tell you when to breathe. And if you like, one technique that I've used when people are really in deep pain is to allow the music to cue a tension and a release. And so if you like, you can try, as you're listening, to start with your hands, tense your fists, and then let them go. And tighten your arms, and let them relax. And just work down your body and back up as you see fit, as you listen. you can also just listen to the beautiful music. But I want to give you some ideas of ways in which you can use, and here the music is very specifically chosen, to breathe, to feel your body, to go inward, to go outward, and once again, to enjoy. So I invite you to close your eyes, if you like, and breathe with the music. Notice the way the music is affecting you. And now take a deep breath. Exhale. Begin to move your fingers and toes. You might notice some tension in your body. Make a gentle circle of your head around your neck, just to work out any tension you might have felt there, and go the other direction. You might want to put your shoulders up to your ears and roll them back. Roll them forward, and then in the other direction. Take another nice deep breath, and when you're ready, open your eyes. Did you notice any entrainment of your breath to the music? And one wonders about your physiological symptoms at this moment, your blood pressure, your heart rate. Did you notice some changes in your body as you listened? Anyone? Anyone notice any images? The occipital lobe throbbing with some beautiful pictures, I hope. Yes? Yes. Okay. So you have an idea now of a therapeutic way to use some music. I don't know what your history is with this music. We took a risk here, but I'm most grateful to Lynn for some beautiful, beautiful renditions there that I hope you enjoyed. So I use these principles now with some older adults who were actually homebound because of various factors. Some of them were caring for a loved one with dementia or with physical disease. Others were physically infirm themselves. And all of them were unable to come into the clinic for psychotherapy, but were severely depressed. And most had symptoms of anxiety as well. And as you can imagine, they certainly must have been feeling a great deal of isolation because they could not really get out of their homes very often, if at all. And so, again, I decided to use a randomized controlled trial to study the impact of music therapy techniques that you've just sampled here. Music for body relaxation, where we used this progressive muscle relaxation that I suggested earlier, the tension and release of each part of the body. I asked people to just find ways to move to the music so that if they were bedbound, they could just move perhaps their upper body and a bit of their feet and legs. If they were more able, they could dance, they could exercise and use music to induce a more energetic state physically. And then I used music for what I call mind relaxation. And we'll share a technique of mind relaxation with music a little later on. But in this randomized controlled trial, as my colleagues have suggested over the past few days, I had to really parse out the effect of me as a music therapist. I made home visits with these older adults for 1/3 of the group, and the other third had what I call minimal therapist interaction. They self-administered some music therapy programs. I sent them instructions. I helped them in a weekly phone call, no more than 20 minutes long, how to find music that was meaningful to them, how to find music that had that rhythm for moving to the music, how to find music that was very programmatic and could reveal images. Most importantly, to find the music that was familiar, that had very important associations and memories, and music that would evoke deep relaxation and also great energy, depending upon the exercise that I was teaching them. And there were 8 of these different techniques that they learned over 8 weeks, 1 per week. As you see from this graph, this is the mean geriatric depression scale. This was quite a depressed sample. And the triangles are a waitlist control group who, as you see, got slightly more depressed over the 8 weeks, but remained relatively stable. The experimental groups, home-based music therapy, a home visit from me, working with them, practicing these techniques with them. Those are the open circles, and the dark circles are the people who did this without a therapist present, with some minimal direction from a music therapist, myself in this case. And over the course of 4 weeks, they made substantial gains and further gains over 8 weeks, with the home-based condition doing better than the self-administered. But by the end of the 8-week period, that post-test point that you see, there were significant differences between both music conditions and these waitlist control. What was really quite amazing to me was that I followed these people 9 months later and found that, as you see those open circles, the home-based music therapy folks had maintained their improvement pretty well in terms of their depression. But the self-administered group, the people who were doing this on their own from the beginning, with, again, limited therapist interaction, continued to improve. And in fact, their depression was clinically significant. They more closely resembled a sample of non-depressed elders by the end of 8 weeks than a sample of depressed people. And here is just another view of the profile of mood states. Here, elevated mood, actually it's more composed, the higher the score, and the lower the score, the more anxious. And you see, again, similarly, the same sorts of dramatic gains, statistically significant differences between music and control, and follow-up gains that are immense, clinically significant findings. While few people actually kicked their wheelchairs, we did have a meaningful change in the life of these older adults by the end. And this is confirmed in other settings where Cochrane reviews by my colleagues Cepeda and Bratt have talked about how music can reduce pain intensity, opioid use, and also in cancer patients, improved anxiety, decreased anxiety, improved mood and quality of life. Based on what we've been hearing over these 2 days about how music infuses the brain and so many areas of the brain, you can understand how this might be indeed a very powerful method of dealing with pain. It is a multidimensional design that Malzak came up with called the neuromatrix model of pain. And he talks about how neurotransmitters from the hypothalamus, from the brainstem, actually inhibit pain signals and challenge those pain signals coming up the dorsal horn when we engage the brain in many different activities, evaluative, cognitive. As you could see, perhaps in these exercises that we've shared with you today, how breathing with the music might actually change the sensory discriminative way that we experience an incoming pain signal. Effective and motivational, when we are motivated to focus on that music and let it change our mood. All of these things are very powerful inducers of pain response. And with music therapy services in places like the surgical unit and the medical center, we're seeing quite efficacious work. So let's try another example, shall we? Lynn, please join me. And here I will let you listen to a piece that I love by Debussy, La Fille aux Cheveux de Lin. And here I encourage you to see what images may come up in your mind and allow those beautiful pictures to form with each note. Again, if you close your eyes, you might find you're able to go inward and find a beautiful place. And now, as the music has come to an end, find a way to keep in the images, the thoughts, the feelings that came to you. Exhale anything that might have come up that you don't need right now. But take an energizing breath. Begin to feel the energy coming back. Begin to return to this place, bringing what you can. And again, move your fingers, move your arms, shake out a bit to get some more energy going. Open your eyes when you're ready. Did any of you go to a beautiful place? Any of you feel really great right now? I hope so. Wonderful. Wonderful. So if you've had some experience that was positive for you today, please join me in thanking Lynn DeVelder. Thank you for participating with me. And now I'll go on to another study with women with metastatic breast cancer. And using some of the same techniques that you've experienced here, but building on these. What I did was to have 3 sessions concurrent with chemotherapy sessions. The first, providing some music that I provided. I took instruments, all that I could carry. I like to use the Native American flute, as my colleagues yesterday do as well. I have a lyre, a 12-string harp, a guitar, a portable keyboard, and all sorts of percussion instruments. And I invite in the second session for these women to participate with me, and using a rain stick or using hand chimes to actually improvise with me. And the third session, we write a song together. And this might be something that they wanted to say to a loved one that they just haven't had the opportunity, and we write it as a song. Or perhaps something about their experience with cancer, their experience with music. This has happened as well. And I'd like to share with you one of the cases in this randomized controlled trial. BW had a great problem, panic response really, when her blood was being drawn. And often it was very difficult for her, and she would begin to panic in the garage before entering the medical center, and she would find herself so shaky she would be very faint. And so in our music therapy sessions, I taught her some of these techniques, some that I've shared with you today, and she wrote me a letter at the end of our experience of our 3 sessions. She said, after my last session with you, I had to go up for that blood test, which was particularly distressing to me. I had been having repeated problems with the test and had been overly emotional about having it again. I was in tears as the nurse tried over and over to get my vein. She asked me to take a deep breath, but I knew that wouldn't help. Without even thinking, my brain must have automatically felt that music would help me. I found myself singing that song that we sang together, only I sang it to myself in my head. The music sounded so loud and powerful that I could not focus on the blood test and the singing at the same time. The music won. The test was over, and I was thrilled, all capital letters here, to realize that I had found a tool to help me with these kinds of procedures. I've tried it on a few other occasions, and it has been successful for me, even with other songs. How many of you have brought music to that little procedure that you're having? Good, very good, yes. And yet, we must be very careful. Naively, when I was beginning my first research efforts in cancer, I said to a friend who was going to chemotherapy, I will help you develop some songs and some music to bring with you, and let's try this out. And she was very willing, and she brought a whole bunch of music, and she went off to her chemotherapy and played the music religiously, as I had instructed. She came back, and I said, how did it go? And she said, well, actually, it was fine. I really was able to focus on the music. But now I've listened to that music at home, and I get really sick and nauseous. So this powerful conditioned response we must be very, very careful with. And we must condition that response well before the painful stimulus, before the surgical procedure, before the chemotherapy. So this lesson that you're learning about our very powerful stimulus, I hope you'll take home with you. Here's another woman. I've been looking for a tool to use as an antidote for pain and tension. Music is a wonderful choice. It makes me feel more secure and optimistic. I truly believe it will help me. Please take a look at Nancy. This was an interview that our local TV station wanted to do, and Nancy said, I have a surprise for you. Here's the interview.
Tuning out her breast cancer and tuning into music.
I have had my cancer for 14 years now, and I have gone through almost every single chemotherapy that's available.
A few months ago, Nancy enrolled in a study at the Zakim Center for Integrative Therapeutics, looking at the benefits of music therapy on the quality of life of breast cancer patients.
Two particular notes that you play on each side of me, and I was between them, and I felt all alone in a very big space.
I think music is something we all take for granted. Music can give them a way to relax. It can give them a distraction from pain. It can offer them something to enhance the quality of their lives.
As part of the study, patients get to make music, empowering them to take control of both their mind and their body.
But at the end of a session, they find that they're in a very different place, physically as well as emotionally. And so indeed there are many effects that I see on their respiration as well as heart rate and blood pressure.
Nancy believes that therapy can heal. Her most recent blood tests, remarkably, showed no sign of her cancer.
I think I was too stunned, and I said, what's going on in my life that's made this difference? And I really have to say it was the sessions that I had with Suzanne.
While it's not known what role, if any, the therapy has played in Nancy's improvement, she is singing its praises.
It's been a particularly wonderful experience.
So as you can imagine, I was quite shocked that this cancer was in remission, and I certainly didn't want that message to be broadcast that music had anything to do with this remission. And yet, this was how Nancy saw this, and I had to do with some control here of the press coming out of that to really talk about those very well documented changes and those that are not. So in my next research, I have on the left, this is called an on-cue stress buster, pain buster, self-administered pain medication. Some of you may have encountered this in the hospital. And on the right is my on-cue pain buster self-regulated pain management system, and it's an iPod. And I hope to look at the relationship between the use of music and self-administered medication. And I'll end with a lovely thought by John Keats. Beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. And of course, we need to end with some beautiful music. And so I've asked another new friend, Adrian Anantawan, to please come up and join me. You may not know Adrian, but you will know of Adrian. He is a budding musician of some considerable talent, and he will be presenting to you in a few moments. But I wanted to introduce him by finishing our session, and I invite you, as you listen to this short introduction by Adrian, to this time take in the entire experience of the music. Notice how it is affecting you as he plays a few different movements, and thoroughly enjoy the experience. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you all for being so willing to participate with me, for your attention, and for being here at this remarkable event, bringing us all together to learn and experience. I hope you'll take music with you wherever you go. Thank you.
Before we take, and thank you, Suzanne and Lynn and Adrian, for that. I'm very moved. Wonderful session. But before we take questions for Suzanne and the other performers, I wondered if Lisa Wong, who will speak after our break, might actually introduce Adrian and tell the audience a little bit about him. Are you comfortable doing that? Or, Adrian, I'm going to have someone speak about, that sounds a little motherly, but that's okay.
I'd be happy to. Adrian Anantawan is a wonderful violinist. As you see, he's graduated from Curtis, and then he went to Yale to get his master's in music. And I met him last year when he was at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, getting his master's in arts and education. So this is a young man who has done much with his life, and in between has played with the Toronto Symphony, and has many musical mentors and many mentors in the world of healing and in disabilities. And he's a role model for all of us, and inspiration, but also just a young man with wonderful ideals, and he is one of he represents the future, I think, of where music, education, and arts and healing are going. Oh yes, and he has a new job which keeps him in Boston. We're so excited. He's going to be conducting at the Conservatory Lab Charter School, which is a charter school that is co-sponsored by the New England Conservatory. But there's a new El Sistema program there, so he is teaching 7 to 12-year-olds, is it? And he's going to be conducting them and working with the strings there.
Thank you. So thank you. And that is Dr. Lisa Wong, who you'll hear after the break. Questions for Suzanne? Yeah, please.
I'm a certified music practitioner in Denver. I work in hospital and in many ICUs. And one thing that I see often are very well-meaning family members who bring in music for their loved one who may be comatose or have just maybe had a heart attack and their heart's racing. And with our training, we aren't trained to do any kind of talk therapy as such. We don't usually have a clinical goal, but homeostasis and stability and relaxation. As this is becoming more commonplace in hospitals with complementary therapies, do you anticipate at some point, or this is for Connie as well, some kind of standardized level across the medical community that will inform hospital staff and other people that there are kinds of music that can be damaging to a patient in a critical condition? I've walked into rooms and had them playing, heavy metal, head-banging, fast-paced, loud stuff that's just really actually harmful. So do you see something coming along those lines?
Yes, the American Music Therapy Association is really, its mission is to educate the public and certainly the healthcare community about the impact of music. And I think you're really identifying the importance of having professionals to guide all of the auditory experience of any healthcare environment. So again, well-meaning administrators may pipe in music of all sorts. And again, we know that music can really be overstimulating, as you suggested in that one case, and that it really is contraindicated in many cases. And in fact, no one has really spoken about the impact of silence and the need for silence as well as music used in a very specific and functional way. And this is really putting this powerful tool in the hands of professionals, I think, is something you're emphasizing in your comment.
I love that comment. Some of you who've been our patients or colleagues at the Cancer Center I run in Albuquerque at UNM, when we built that gorgeous new facility, I fought with the architects, planners, and all of the people involved in planning that there would be no televisions in that building, no TVs in the waiting room, no background music of any sort. And it was quite a battle, Suzanne.
Yes.
That we would actually have a space that would be silent. And we actually ended up getting the architects to design a space that would be muffled. So there would be very low ambient sound. And I was told how many of our patients and their families would hate that. Who's got to sit in a waiting room and wants to watch a TV, and this is terrible. And the most amazing thing is what a positive reaction there's been to the quiet of the building. And then we allow individual selection for music. So it's been I don't know how replicated that is, but I loved your comment sometimes, how healing silence is, and the absence of sort of ridiculous noise that invades us constantly. I wanted to go to the woman, the example of your friend, the music that you gave her to help her through her chemotherapy. One of the things Dr. Castleth and I have talked about is where best are complementary medicines administered, right? So as a cancer center director, I always want to believe that it ought to be in our building, right? And we do that. We have music programs and our patients love them. But you talked about the conditioned response, and I wonder for the scientists in the room and the therapists, do we really understand the biologic mechanism of that? Because many of our patients, as much as we try to create a beautiful healing space, when they're done with their treatment, we're the last place they ever want to come back to. And it will make many cancer patients, it's a well-known phenomenon, even thinking about coming to that building very physically ill. So what Peter talked about the first day about how we laid down our emotional memories in the prefrontal cortex and the context of those is very emotionally eliciting in the future. So I thought your comment about the music we use therapeutically, while it may be incredibly helpful for that moment, could have an unintended consequence sometime later because it evokes too many memories of a time that people would really like to release. So how do you handle that? You know, we talk about music therapy for a moment, and we talked last night about chemo brain. There's a lot of cancer survivors too who go on living.
Right.
So how do you sort of handle, have you done any work around sort of that conditioned response? Barry and I talk about do the integrative medicine in the cancer center. Barry's closing slide was her building at Sloan Kettering, which is a former bank. It isn't the cancer clinic at all, where many of your patients come for integrative medicine, yet you're also doing it in the inpatient setting. So I don't know if you or Barry want to comment about this, but I think this is particularly fascinating and something we see in virtually all of our patients.
Right. Well, indeed, the protocols that have been developed for these medical settings use a well-known cognitive behavioral technique. And we are conditioning this relaxation response in many cases to the music. And that must be conditioned first. So it's a temporal effect. We must introduce the music at the right time and then perhaps decondition some of the associations in the same way. You want to further comment, Barry?
Yeah, anticipatory nausea is a perfect example and something that everyone is familiar with if you work in an oncology setting. But a couple of really important points which I like to stress, which you talked about, but just to nail them home. One is the individual's own preference and selection, and not only selection of music, but when, where, yes, no. That's extremely important. So one size does not fit all. Cancer patients are human beings, and they are different, as is all of us and everyone else. So we have to very much depend on what the patient, what that individual wants, which may be heavy metal music. And maybe for that patient, that is somehow home and comforting. It wouldn't be for others, but that's why it's so important to focus on the individual. The other thing I wanted to mention is I learned when I started out in this business many years ago that it is important, if possible, to provide the kinds of services we're talking about, such as music therapy, any kind of complementary modality, or support sessions where people can talk with one another, not in the same building where they had their surgery and their chemotherapy. And I learned that when I was starting out at the University of Pennsylvania, and we offered for the first time, because it was not common at that time, it is common now, but we offered many sessions, for example, group sort of therapy sessions for children, students at Penn whose parents had cancer, family members, patients themselves. No one would come. And then I realized that they didn't want to come back into this setting, and that had so much pain associated with it. And so, bottom line, you do it in a church basement, you borrow somebody's space in a school, any place except that hospital. And I do a lot of consultations with people around the world who run hospitals or cancer centers, or who are governments wanting to set up programs. And one of the major things that I stress in those consultations is if you possibly can, buy an old house down the road, make that into your center for complementary therapies or integrative medicine. Don't do it in the hospital itself. If you have no other choice, and it's got to be within the walls of the hospital, have a separate entrance. Put it someplace where people, the odor, the views, the feelings are less likely to be reinvented and to create difficulty. So we are very fortunate at Sloan Kettering to be in this old bank, as Cheryl mentioned. And there are some problems with it. It's over 100 years old, and my office is in a basement near one of the vaults. We have 2 huge vaults. They're used as offices and so on.
Actually, Mary, I think it's pretty cool that your office is a bank vault. I don't know. It's sort of weird, but it's pretty
It's a
cool.
feeling of safety, but patients love going there, and I honestly don't think that if we offered the same services by the same people in the hospital, I don't think they would come.
Hello, my name is Mary Costello, and I'm a journalist. I'm new to this group this morning. And I'm involved with the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill. And I know you're really talking about cancer treatment, but my son's involved in a project in Boston called Rock into Recovery. And the effect of music on this community is dramatic. I know there was a landmark study done at UNM with Sam Keene on tobacco and the mentally ill, but I just keep listening to what you're talking about and the impact of music therapy to help these folks get off what other drugs or effects they're doing can happen. And I know that there are people out there in the Alliance for the Mentally Ill that would be happy to work with you folks and expand your project.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We did focus in our first couple days on dementia and Alzheimer's, but we didn't go all the way into mental illness. But there's no question about that role of music therapy in that setting. Absolutely. Any final questions for Suzanne?